welcome everyone. I see some new faces and some recent faces and plenty of familiar faces. It's wonderful to see all of you. We're having a special edition tonight as I review the history of this group, which started as a Lenten series back before the pandemic and then evolved into a more permanent format. And I just thought that the new year might be a good time for us to take stock of where we are, and I'd like to offer you some invitations to become more involved if you'd like to, but I'd also just like to say right off the bat that I'm not anticipating changing anything in any particularly dramatic way, so don't be worried about that. If anything, I foresee taking this group fairly permanently into the future, so let's just take stock of where we are and talk about ways we might enrich and deepen our community. And I tried to decide whether I should do that before the main meeting, but I think since I'm inviting our prayer and discernment, I'll do it as I usually do right before the centering prayer period, so that we bring our prayerful energy into what we're doing. So I'll begin by chanting this little prayer by Stephen Charleston that I've been playing around with as our intro. Let it grow in us, this light. Let it grow in all of our hearts, the light of our love for one another. Let it grow and get stronger. Let it become ever more radiant, enfolding all who need its blessing. Let it heal us, this wondrous light. Let its love heal our fear and sadness, so that we may rejoice in being alive. Let us be freed by the powerful light of the Spirit. Let it open the cage of despair in every mind. Reach toward the light that is already encircling you, even as you finish hearing these words. Welcome to this digital contemplative prayer group. This is a place for all God's people. Whatever your beliefs or doubts, you are welcome here. If you are new to centering prayer, just follow the instructions as the session unfolds, and you are also welcome to use the silence in any other way that is right for you. Loving God, we ask for your blessings upon this gathering, recognizing that we bring the joys and sorrows of our lives here today. If anyone would like to mention silently or aloud expressions of gratitude or concern for ourselves, our families, our friends, our society, our nation, or our fragile planet, please do so now.
Help us each, Lord, to be present to those that we love and care for, and just be ourselves.
For my mom, Elizabeth, who's in the hospital awaiting the heart surgery.
For our country and a special medical intention for good friends.
For those who struggle with mental health, that they might get a glimmer of the light.
On this sacred day of Epiphany, I am grateful to be with you all, and grateful to Lindsay, and grateful that God is with us. Amen.
God, we trust that you hear our prayers, silent or spoken, wordless or in words. So I'm just going to speak for a little while about the history of our group and how we got to where we are now, and some possibilities for exploration together as we go forward about how to deepen our community. But as I mentioned before, I don't envision any dramatic changes for this group, and in fact, I feel very committed to continuing this group in a similar format for beyond the pandemic. This group is very important to me. I'm committed to creating a place where we can be together in sacred silence. There are a lot of other kinds of groups, but I find that my own call is to create a group that's very comfortable for people who like a lot of silence and don't want to be pressured into any kind of sharing in the format of the group. I've received a lot of sentiments of gratitude from people who say that this group or the Grace Church group that preceded it was the only place in their lives where they could go where they weren't required to talk all the time. And so I think that that's a gift for all of us. But we have other needs as well, and so there might be ways to expand the group kind of sideways to make other opportunities for us to connect with each other or to serve each other in the group. So we'll think about that a little bit. I started my well, I've had a number of careers, and I went back to seminary at age 40 and found that my call was to become a spiritual director who specialized in working with people who are uncomfortable with institutional religion. So for a long time, I've been trying to find ways to reach people who are looking for spiritual nourishment, but who maybe don't fit into other kinds of communities, who aren't necessarily gathered together in a central way. So it was very natural for me to start looking for those people online. So I started performing experiments with websites and blogs and Skype centering prayer. I started doing regular Skype centering prayer and group spiritual direction 8 years ago, which seems impossible now that I could have been doing this for this long. But I felt that there was a real synergy between contemplative practice and online media that sometimes people assumed, because of their associations of social media being kind of noisy and cluttered, that there wouldn't be a good fit. But to me, it felt like there was a good fit. I think I had a kind of a vision of what we're doing now that led me to teach a course at General Theological Seminary here in New York about using online technology for spiritual practice, which I've been doing for 7 or 8 years now. And one thing that was kind of strange is that as I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, I started to become one of the people who could benefit the most from this kind of technology. It was always obvious to me that meeting in this way would be of great benefit to people with disabilities who weren't able to travel very well. And slowly I've actually become one of those people, which I didn't foresee. And even before the pandemic, I met with my spiritual director's discernment group to explore, when my book was published in March, how much I would travel to promote the book, and I decided that I would not travel very much unless there was some special reason to do so, that I would promote the book using Zoom and other forms of online technology, do readings on Zoom. So when the pandemic came, I was strangely prepared for it. I was already scheduled to lead a 6-week Lenten centering prayer series on Zoom, which I'd been doing for a number of years. I'd been doing it every Lent and in the fall as well. So that had already begun. And then here was the pandemic, and everybody was suddenly very interested in that. And I realized that I was uniquely positioned to help people get online. So I reached out to Contemplative Outreach, and we started writing articles and doing little seminars and doing whatever we could to get people online. So it was very exciting for me to be able to be of service to people in that way. And there was a strange convergence with my book, which happened to be published the same week as the lockdown here in New York City. So it was as if all the things I'd been bringing my energy to were suddenly coming to fruition at this particular moment. But I have been kind of in crisis mode for a while, trying to meet all the needs there and we quickly moved our Grace Church group that was meeting on Tuesday nights online as well. So then we had 2 groups and writing articles and doing workshops. I've been kind of rushing around, fighting fires and doing things on a kind of an ad hoc basis. And so it seems like a moment to just kind of take stock and shift gears and maybe confer with you more about what direction we should be going in and where we're being led as a community. And there are several things that have inspired that for me. One is that, as some of you know, I recently was teaching a course at General Seminary where the students came and presented to you as part of the class. And that, they almost unanimously said, was their favorite part about my course, was coming and presenting to you and being able to be a part of your community and the incredibly warm, hospitable reception you gave them, and the ability to present to a real group instead of just a class. And it was an incredibly enlivening experience for me to see their experiments interacting with you as a group, and for me to experience how our community felt with these. There was something about the people in the class coming into our community that helped me to feel how strong and beautiful and wonderful and special our community is. And it also makes me wonder if maybe some of you would like to be performing the kinds of experiments that the class was, in terms of presenting and being part of what we do. And I'm open to that if you have a sense of call about that. Another thing that happened that inspired me to think a little bit more about who we are as a community is, some of you may have received the email from the Meditation Chapel people about the ordination of the contemplative heart, and some of you may have attended that meeting that Corey Krupowitz led about discerning a kind of an online monastic community, a kind of an associates order for online monastics, and for people who are kind of longing, who are part of Meditation Chapel, but longing to go deeper and interested in making some vows, a kind of a rule of life or a kind of commitment statement to themselves. And that project seems to have gone into a different direction because it received so much interest. I think that Corey was a bit overwhelmed, and now he's decided to rename the project something to do with householders. Those of you who are familiar with the Hindu tradition will know that in Hinduism there are 4 phases of life: the student phase of life, the householder phase where you become, you focus on your work and your family and creating, coming to fruition in the world in terms of your activities and your career. And then the next stage is the forest dwellers stage, where you've maybe you're coming to the end of your career and you step back a little bit more from life and you become more contemplative. And then the 4th phase, which not everyone will enter, is the sannyasin phase, where you become a total renunciate. So Corey was interested in creating a discernment group for people who are more in the householder phase, very active in terms of growing a family or having children or grandchildren. But it strikes me, I don't know most of you that well in terms of where you are in your lives, but it strikes me that most of us are forest dwellers, that we're kind of more towards the later part of our life and we're stepping back and we're entering a contemplative phase. So maybe we have a call to explore what that means to us together. Then a third thing that inspired me was that as part of the class that I was teaching with the general seminary students, when we did a quiet day together, I invited the class and whoever would like to from our group to spend a silent lunchtime together. And Joe from our group expanded that to make that a regular thing, where you are all invited on Fridays to have silent lunch together. And Joe is the leader of that, and you're invited in our newsletter to contact him if you would like to do that. Now, one thing I find very interesting about that is I, as a person with finite time and energy, and also as an ill person which makes my time even more finite and gives me certain limitations, I'm always torn between wanting to serve you, and of course I can't do that infinitely. But one of the things I find interesting about Joe's Silent Lunches is that it's happening off on the side and it doesn't really require anything from me. Joe has taken charge of that. All I had to do is put the notice in the newsletter, which just gets repeated every week, so I don't have to do anything. So I just hold that up as a kind of a model of something that could be happening. If you feel a call, if you feel a kind of an inspiration to gather people from our group in some particular way, that's a kind of an interesting thing. It makes me feel like we're becoming more of a church, like the church has the minister, the pastor, and then the lay people. And a really strong church has a really strong lay community who are doing all different kinds of interesting things and not expecting the pastor to do everything. So that's just an idea for you. If you have fantasies and longings for what this group might become, are you being called into some kind of leadership yourself? Is there something you would like to see happen that you could be initiating? Another example I thought of is in December we were doing a project where you were invited to read the scripture passages for our Lectio Divina, and we had 3 different readers every night reading 3 different translations. That's not something I'm planning to continue in terms of the 3 different translations, but I was thinking that it would be very easy to set up a system where we have an online page where you could sign up to read, and we could have 3 readers every week reading. Usually I choose, if on Wednesday nights I choose a passage that has to do with the little talk I give, so it would be that rather than scripture most of the time. But that again would be something, it took a certain amount of work for me to contact everybody, and then sometimes people had to drop out, and that took a certain amount of work. But if there could be somebody who was in charge of that, it would be very easy for me to set up a web page for people to sign up, and then if there was somebody who was interested in taking charge of that I could be the main point person who I could send the reading to, and they could coordinate with the week's readers. That's another example of something that could be going on the side. So I'm just throwing out some ideas. Oh, and then the other thing I was thinking about was some kind of regular meeting. One thing that David and Jim and I do on Tuesday nights, David and Jim and I started the Grace Church Brooklyn Heights Centering Prayer Group like 14 years ago or something. And then a few years later, I invited Jim and David to become co-leaders with me, which was a wonderful thing for me to have their participation, and I felt like it made our group much stronger. And it also made a community for us to be a kind of a sounding board for each other. And we would say, well, how do you think this is working? And should we change the Lectio in this way? And is this making people comfortable? And how can we be more hospitable? We were always bouncing ideas off of each other. And a lot of what you see in my book and in the program that we use in these groups every Tuesday and Wednesday night is the fruit of that kind of collaboration and kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. And then when we moved online, I told David and Jim that I really missed that because there's a different dynamic. We would arrive early and we would have some time to talk, and then everybody else would leave and we would have some more time to talk. And we didn't have that in quite the same way online. So we instituted a staff meeting every Tuesday at 6:40. Jim and David and I meet, and we try to do the same thing. We don't necessarily have anything to talk about, but as we sit there, things come up that are very, very helpful to just have this kind of space for things to come up, and then we troubleshoot and think of things that might make things work better. So we could do something like that with our group, maybe on Wednesday nights, either before or after the group, where we had 20 minutes or a half hour that were just kind of set aside, where if anybody had some idea or something that they've noticed that they thought could be improved, or just something that they wanted to say, we could have there be a kind of a time for that. We could also start with a kind of a bigger meeting, maybe on a Saturday, for anybody who was interested in to just kind of get the ball rolling so that I could get an idea of what you might be thinking. So, to sum up, I'm not going anywhere. I love this group. I'm very committed to this group. It suits me better to be leading a group online than in person, and I don't know quite what's going to happen when the pandemic ends. Jim and David and I have talked about maybe trying to get a camera inside Grace Church and kind of broadcast from there, which we actually tried to do before the pandemic and didn't work for various reasons, but now everything's so different in terms of how comfortable churches are with that kind of thing that maybe it would be possible now. But in any case, I don't foresee this group. It's possible that we might go back to 1 day a week, but I don't foresee this group ending anytime soon. I'm limited in what I can do, but I'm committed to helping this group to deepen and grow and expand in the ways that God is calling us to do so. So, what is God calling you into? What have you been longing for or dreaming about that could maybe come into being through this group, through you, through the kind of mysterious chemistry of a group of people who don't even know each other very well because we don't know about each other the way we would if we were in a church and we were going to a coffee hour, but we do know each other. And I mean, that's one of the things I feel very committed to, creating a place where we know each other in the silence. I'm not saying, what I'm not saying is that it would be better if we were talking to each other a lot. I just want to make a space for new things to come into being, for the group to grow in the ways that it's meant to grow. So I invite your discernment, your prayers, your emails. You might not have anything to say about this right now, but something I've said tonight might plant a seed, and we'll just make space for that to grow. So please don't feel any pressure or duty. Don't feel like you need to get more involved out of a kind of dutifulness. It may be that what I'm saying doesn't cause anything to be different in an outward way about our group, but I just thought it would be helpful to have a kind of a taking stock of where we are. I feel you more and more as a community, so I invite you to feel each other more and more, and just pray about what that means and how we can cultivate this beautiful garden that we've ended up with as a result of the strange circumstances of the past year. So let's turn now to our centering prayer time. I invite you to take your posture. Sorry, I'm having trouble finding my centering prayer instructions. Here they are. I invite you to sit with your back straight and your feet flat on the ground or in any other stable position. Your hands on your thighs or in your lap or in any comfortable position that you can maintain for the 20 minutes. And gently close your eyes and take a few deep breaths and just feel yourself in your space where you are. And then feel what it's like to be with each other in virtual space as a virtual community, a community of prayer. And just notice how your body is, and if there are any adjustments you need to make to be comfortable and alert and stable for the prayer period. And just take a moment to notice who God is for you right now, whatever that might mean. A sense of mystery, unknowing, aliveness, community, hope, awe. And renew your commitment to be open and present to the divine. And if you'd like, you could silently begin to repeat your sacred word or touch your breath ever so gently with your attention, using your sacred symbol to orient yourself towards God. And during the prayer period, whenever you notice that you've become engaged with your thoughts, you can just gently disengage yourself from them, returning to the sacred symbol if necessary, using it to point yourself back towards God, or sounding your sacred word like a little bell calling you back to prayer. Loving God, thank you for the gift of this community of silence. Help us to be your people in the world. Our Lectio Divina reading tonight is from Parker Palmer's Let Your Life Speak, Listening for the Voice of Vocation. I'll read the passage 3 times and then invite you to share a word or phrase from the passage that resonated with you, if you choose. Listen with the ear of the heart. Vocation does not come from willfulness. It comes from listening. I must listen to my life and try to understand what it is truly about, quite apart from what I would like it to be about, or my life will never represent anything real in the world, no matter how earnest my intentions. That insight is hidden in the word vocation itself, which is rooted in the Latin for voice. Vocation does not mean a goal that I pursue. It means a calling that I hear. Before I can tell my life what I want to do with it, I must listen to my life telling me who I am. I must listen for the truths and values at the heart of my own identity, not the standards by which I must live, but the standards by which I cannot help but live if I am living my own life. Vocation does not come from willfulness. It comes from listening. I must listen to my life and try to understand what it is truly about, quite apart from anything I would like it to be about, or my life will never represent anything real in the world, no matter how earnest my intentions. That insight is hidden in the word vocation itself, which is rooted in the Latin for voice. Vocation does not mean a goal that I pursue. It means a calling that I hear. Before I can tell my life what I want to do with it, I must listen to my life telling me who I am. I must listen for the truths and values at the heart of my own identity, not the standards by which I must live, but the standards by which I cannot help but live if I am living my own life. Vocation does not come from willfulness. It comes from listening. I must listen to my life and try to understand what it is truly about, quite apart from what I would like it to be about. Or my life will never represent anything real in the world, no matter how earnest my intentions. That insight is hidden in the word vocation itself, which is rooted in the Latin for voice. Vocation does not mean a goal that I pursue. It means a calling that I hear. Before I can tell my life what I want to do with it, I must listen to my life telling me who I am. I must listen for the truths and values at the heart of my own identity, not the standards by which I must live, but the standards by which I cannot help but live if I am living my own life. I invite you to share a word or phrase that resonated for you.
A calling that I hear.
Listen to my life.
Telling me who I am.
A voice.
A calling that I hear.
Living my own life.
The standard I can't help but live.
I must listen.
My own life.
Who I am.
Listen to truths and values.
Let's close by saying together the prayer of Jesus. Ground of all being, Mother of life, Father of the universe, your name is sacred, beyond speaking. May we know your presence. May your longings be our longings, in heart and in action. May there be food for the human family today, and for the whole earth community. Forgive us the falseness of what we have done, as we forgive those who are untrue to us. Do not forsake us in our time of conflict, but lead us into new beginnings. For the light of life, the vitality of life, and the glory of life are yours, now and forever. Amen. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Lindsay.
Lindsay.
Thank you,
Thank
Liz.
you, Lindsay.